cartilaginous fish stay afloat? Because a shark is much more dense than the surrounding water. So if you are more dense than the surrounding water, what is going to happen to you? You're going to sink. Good. Or you're going to drown. Yeah, well, you're going to sink. And so you need to like stay up in the surface waters if that's where all your food is, right? And be able to like hunt for your food. So you need to stay buoyant, right? And there's two things that the cartilaginous fish will use in order to stay buoyant and not sink down to the bottom. And that is their oil-filled liver and then the lift created by their pectoral fins. So their liver is huge. Okay, you'll see this tomorrow in your dissection. They have a 3-lobed liver. Okay, it's giant. And it is full of oil. It's a special oil called squalene. Okay, yeah, it's weird. And is oil more or less dense than water? Less dense, right? It floats on top. So if you have this big organ in your body that's full of oil, is that going to help you stay afloat? Yeah, it's like an internal life preserver. Okay, so that helps them to stay buoyant. Then they also have their pectoral fins. Their pectoral fins are shaped like airplane wings, or rather, airplane wings are shaped like shark fins. Okay, so they've got this kind of teardrop shape. Okay, and that teardrop shape will create lift because as the water goes over these fins, the water that passes underneath can go in a straight line, but the water that passes over has to go in like this longer route, which creates less pressure up here, more pressure down here, and lift gets created. Okay, and so sharks, as they're swimming, their little pectoral fins or big pectoral fins are helping to create lift. That also means if they stop swimming, what'll happen? They can sink. Yes. Okay, so that's how they stay afloat. Let's look at the whale shark really fast, and then we need to talk about digestion so you know what you're looking at tomorrow in your lab. Okay. So whale shark, really cool. It's the biggest fish in the ocean. It can be 40 feet long and 36 tons. So that's huge. But whale sharks, you would think, oh, giant shark, it's going to be scary. It's not. They're filter feeders. Okay. They do have teeth, but they have 300 teeny tiny rows of like teeny tiny teeth. And they're filter feeders. They're going to eat plankton. You can swim with them. They're not dangerous. Like people like do ecotourism and go swim with the whale sharks. It's pretty cool. So you can go to Cancun and swim with the whale sharks. Okay, so you can see on this slide the range of the whale shark. Okay, so everywhere that's in blue is where you will find them on Earth. And then you can see in the upper right-hand corner, that's the comparison, like size comparison between a whale shark and a school bus. So it's pretty big. So cool. It would be pretty cool. Yes. All right, digestion and sharks. Sharks are cool. So sharks have biting jaws, okay, that they can use to bite off chunks of flesh. Depending on the type of shark. However, sharks don't like chew their food. They swallow it whole. Okay? So they've got teeth that are really good for tearing off chunks of meat, but then they swallow that whole. They don't sit there and like nom nom nom, this tastes good. Okay? They don't chew their food. Why do you think a shark would need to just swallow its food whole and not actually sit there and take time to chew their food? Their prey would go away. But what else? They do have a tongue. It's just different, a little bit different from ours. Yeah, it's not as mobile as ours is. They do. What about, so water that comes into the mouth, where does it go over? The gills. So if you like have to close your mouth and like chew your food, what are you missing out on? Oxygen, right? So a shark can't like sit there and like, ooh, enjoy its food, because if it did, it would not be getting oxygen over its gills, water over its gills. Okay, so it can breathe. So they have to swallow their food whole. Shark's teeth, you can actually tell a lot about the lifestyle of a shark, so like what it eats, based on the shape of its teeth. So a shark that just eats like fish is going to have lots of like long, skinny, like spear-like teeth to like grab onto the fish and then swallow the fish whole. Shark that's going to be more of like a predator of bigger types of animals that it'll be tearing chunks out of. It's going to have like kind of more like triangular teeth with like serrations on either side. Okay, like the great white shark has those big like giant triangular teeth. And those serrations and stuff on either side, those act like knives, right? So you see when a shark like bites down, what does it do? It like, yeah, thrashes back and forth, okay? And so it's going to use that to like use those serrations on their teeth and that movement of their body to tear through the flesh and like tear a piece of flesh off, okay? And then they'll swallow it. After they swallow it, it goes through the esophagus into the stomach, gets digested, and then into the intestine. Okay, and in the intestine, that's where nutrients are absorbed. Okay, and that's where like all the nutrients from your food get absorbed into your body, and your body uses them. Do you have a long or a short intestine? Yeah, long, very long. If you have a long intestine, that's really, really good for being able to absorb lots of nutrients because you are able to have lots of time as the food passes through that intestine to absorb the nutrients. Sharks have a very short intestine, okay? So that could be bad, right? Because with a short intestine, not a lot of time to absorb nutrients, and like then bad stuff happens. You don't get food, okay? So they do have a short intestine, but what they have inside is kind of cool. It's called a spiral valve. So it's exactly kind of what it sounds like. It's in a spiral shape. And you'll see it in your dissection tomorrow. You'll cut open the intestine and see the spiral valve. What it does is it allows or prevents the food from just passing like straight through the intestine and out. It makes the food go in the spiral motion as it moves through the intestine. So it slows it down, okay, to allow for more nutrient absorption. And it helps to push the food against, or digested food against the walls of the intestine to absorb, and also helps to increase surface area. So it's good. Okay, and then any waste products exit, any digestive waste products exit out the anus. Okay, the anus exits into this opening called the cloaca. Okay, the cloaca is a common opening for any digestive waste. Also, any sort of like waste that your kidneys would filter, so like pee. Okay, and then it's also reproductive. Okay, so all of those things will exit out through the cloaca. Okay, and then out into the water. And so you can see, right, the mouth and the esophagus to the stomach, then your intestines. It does a little bit. And then it's liver. You can see the big liver. Okay. Okay. All right. So osmoregulation in sharks, skates, and rays. So these guys live in the ocean. And the ocean is salty, right? There's lots of salts in the water, 35 parts per thousand. And so anything that lives in salt water is going to have to maintain some sort of saltwater balance, right? Between the water and their internal solutes and stuff that are in their body. So they have to maintain some sort of saltwater balance. So the way that they're going to do that is going to be different than different kinds of animals. And in chondrichthyes, we're going to talk about that today. But as we talk about this, you do need to know and be able to compare the difference between how chondrichthyes maintains osmoregulation and then osteichthyes does, which is what we'll talk about next cycle. So we'll talk about next cycle how osteichthyes maintains their saltwater balance. So you'll need to compare the chondrichthyes and osteichthyes in this way. All right? So you'll need to compare them in several ways. This is one of them. All right, so make sure that you know the difference between these two. Okay, so do you remember last semester how we talked about osmosis? And then we talked about like how water is going to move towards where there's more salt, right? So if you're an animal and you're living in water and there's more salt in the water than in your body, what's going to happen? Water's going to move out, right? And your cells are going to shrivel up and you're going to die, right? So you have to maintain some sort of balance to make sure that you have enough water in your cells so that you don't die, because dying is bad, okay? So you need to maintain that balance. How animals like sharks and skates and rays do this is they actually maintain a balance with the water that is like a saltwater balance that is either equal to or greater than the surrounding seawater. Meaning, guys, meaning that the amount of salt and water that are in the cells is either equal or greater, the salt concentration is either equal or greater than the water salt concentrations outside in the water. Okay, that is way too hard to say. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that means that if it's equal to, the concentrations are equal, Cody, what's going to happen? Okay, where's the water going to move? If they're equal, okay, it's going to be in equilibrium. Maybe you should listen. So they're going to be in equilibrium, so the water will move equally back and forth, right? It's going to be happy. Yay, everything's wonderful. Okay, or greater than, so if they have more salt inside of their body, then what's going to happen? Which way is the water going to move?
Sad.
If water's going to move in, right? If they have more salt inside of their body, yes? So if they got more salt in, water's going to move in. Okay, so that's good because that means you're either equal to that water or you got a little bit more salt, so you're going to gain some water. And gaining water is easy to get rid of if you've got the right structures, right? Okay, so that's good. How do they actually maintain this solute concentration that is either equal to or greater than the salt water? Well, the way that they do that is interesting. They actually retain large amounts of nitrogenous waste. What does that mean? Well, they maintain this chemical in their body called urea. Urea is a product of like your metabolism. So when your cells break down your food and use energy and stuff, they produce urea. And normally your kidneys filter that out and it goes out in your urine, okay, and you pee it out. Sharks and skates and rays will actually maintain some of that urea in their muscle tissues and in their tissues rather than filtering it out. So by having that urea in their tissues, it allows for their like solute concentration to be equal to the salt water. Does that make sense? Okay, so they're able to maintain those nitrogenous wastes and have an equal or greater than salt balance. They also can retain another type of nitrogenous waste. It's called TMAO, or trimethylamine oxide. But you mostly just need to know urea. All right? Having that urea in the muscle tissue and stuff can actually make like shark meat not taste as good and stuff. So sharks can also gain salt other ways. So like when they eat, right? When they take a bite out of something, they're probably going to swallow some salt water with that meal because they're living in salt water and opening their mouth underwater. So they're going to be swallowing some water. Any sort of like salt that's in there that is excess and that they don't need, they actually have ways to get rid of that salt. So they're going to have like chloride cells in their gills that are going to like get rid of salts back into the water. Also, like their kidneys will filter out any excess salts, okay, and get rid of those in their urine. And then they've also got a rectal gland. Okay, so they've and you saw that in your dissection, right? A little kind of like thing at the end near the cloaca. That little rectal gland will actually help filter any excess salts out and stick the excess salts like into the intestine, and then that excess salt would be excreted.